Lisa had always been the responsible one in her family. At 28, she worked long hours at a consulting firm in Chicago, rarely taking breaks or vacations. But when her grandmother turned 80, there was no question about it. She had to be there. Her grandmother lived in a small town in Montana, the kind of place where everyone knew everyone, and life moved at a slower pace. The problem was timing. Lisa booked her flight at the last minute, squeezing it between two major projects at work. Her boss wasn't happy. But family came first this time. She packed quickly, threw her laptop in her bag just in case, and rushed to the airport with barely enough time to check in. The airport was chaos. Delayed flights, crying babies, and frustrated travelers filled every corner. Lisa grabbed her boarding pass and headed straight for the coffee stand. She needed caffeine to survive this trip. As she reached for her cup on the counter, another hand grabbed it at the exact same time. "Sorry, that's mine," she said quickly. "No, I ordered a large cappuccino," the man replied, looking equally tired. They both checked their cups and realized they'd grabbed each other's orders. Lisa had his black coffee, and he had her cappuccino. They laughed awkwardly, switched drinks, and went their separate ways. Lisa didn't think much of it, just another random airport encounter. The flight was bumpy but uneventful. When Lisa landed in Montana, she headed straight to the rental car counter, ready to drive the 3 hours to her grandmother's town. But there was a problem. The agent looked at her with apologetic eyes and explained that her reservation had been canceled because she'd arrived 2 hours late due to flight delays. All the cars were gone. Lisa felt panic rising in her chest. She needed to get to the party. It was tomorrow afternoon, and the drive was long. She tried other rental companies, but everything was booked. The winter season brought skiers and tourists, and there wasn't a single vehicle available. As she stood there, trying not to cry from frustration, she heard a familiar voice behind her. "You again?" She turned and saw the coffee guy from the airport. He looked just as stressed as she felt. "They gave away my car too," he said, running a hand through his hair. "I've been trying to find anything, but there's nothing." His name was Michael, and he explained that he was a photographer traveling to document old buildings in rural Montana. His project had taken months to arrange, and he couldn't miss this opportunity. They stood there in silence for a moment, both stuck in the same impossible situation. Then the rental agent spoke up. "Actually, we do have one vehicle that just became available. Someone canceled their reservation 10 minutes ago. It's a small SUV, but it's all we have." Lisa and Michael looked at each other. Neither wanted to give up this chance. But there was only one car. Michael was the first to speak. "Look, where are you headed?" "A town called Pine Ridge. It's about 3 hours north. I'm going to Riverside, which is on the way. We could share the ride and split the cost. I just need to get there before the weather turns bad." Lisa hesitated. Sharing a car with a complete stranger wasn't ideal, but what choice did she have? The forecast showed a storm coming, and she couldn't afford to wait another day. She agreed. They loaded their bags into the SUV, and Michael took the first shift driving. The road stretched ahead of them, winding through mountains and forests. For the first hour, they barely spoke. Lisa checked her emails, trying to stay connected to work. Michael focused on the road, occasionally glancing at the darkening sky. Then the first snowflakes started falling, small at first, almost pretty. But within 20 minutes, the snow became thick and heavy. The wind picked up, pushing against the car. Visibility dropped fast. Michael slowed down, gripping the steering wheel tightly. "This doesn't look good," he said quietly. Lisa looked up from her phone and felt her stomach drop. She could barely see 10 feet ahead. The road was disappearing under white powder, and there were no other cars in sight. They were alone on a remote highway in the middle of a blizzard. "Should we pull over?" Lisa asked, trying to keep her voice steady. "I don't think we have much choice." Just then, through the swirling snow, they saw a light. A small building appeared on the side of the road, barely visible. A wooden sign read, "Mountain View Inn," with a dim light hanging above it. Michael didn't hesitate. He turned into the parking lot, the tires crunching over fresh snow. They sat in the car for a moment, watching the storm intensify around them. Neither of them said what they were both thinking. This wasn't going to be a quick stop. This storm was serious, and they were stuck. The inn looked like something from an old movie. Wooden walls, a wraparound porch, and smoke coming from a stone chimney. Michael and Lisa grabbed their bags and ran through the snow to the front door. The wind nearly knocked them over. Inside, warmth hit them immediately. A fire crackled in a large stone fireplace, and the smell of fresh bread filled the air. An elderly woman appeared from a back room, wiping her hands on an apron. Her face was kind, with deep smile lines around her eyes. "Oh my goodness, you two made it just in time," she said, ushering them closer to the fire. "That storm came up faster than anyone expected. I'm Margaret. I own this place." Lisa and Michael introduced themselves, shaking snow from their coats. Margaret brought them hot tea and explained that the storm had already closed the roads. The highway patrol wasn't letting anyone through until it passed. "How long do you think that'll be?" Lisa asked, worried about missing her grandmother's party. Margaret shook her head. "Could be a day. Could be 3. These mountain storms are unpredictable. But you're safe here. And that's what matters." Michael asked about rooms, and Margaret's expression changed slightly. She looked almost embarrassed. "Well, that's the thing. I have a family staying here. A couple with 3 kids. They took my other 3 rooms. I only have 1 room left. And with the power lines down across the county, I can't make any calls to find you other options." Lisa and Michael exchanged glances. 1 room. The situation was getting more complicated by the minute. "It has a fireplace and plenty of blankets," Margaret continued. "I know it's not ideal, but it's warm and safe. Everything else for miles is closed or full. What choice did they have?" Lisa looked at Michael, and he nodded slightly. They agreed to take it. Margaret led them upstairs to a small room at the end of the hall. It was cozy, with flowered wallpaper and lace curtains. A large bed sat in the center, covered with a thick quilt. There was an armchair by the fireplace, a small table, and one window that showed nothing but white snow outside. "I'll bring you extra blankets and pillows," Margaret said, "and dinner will be ready in about an hour. I hope you like stew." When she left, Lisa and Michael stood awkwardly in the doorway. Neither wanted to be the first to enter. "Look, I'll sleep on the floor," Michael finally said. "You take the bed. We'll just make the best of this until the storm clears." "Are you sure? The floor looks pretty hard." "I've slept in worse places. I once spent a week in a tent in Alaska photographing the northern lights. This is luxury compared to that." They set some ground rules. They'd give each other privacy when changing. They'd keep conversation polite and respectful. And they'd leave the moment the roads opened. It was a business arrangement, nothing more. Margaret brought dinner to their room since the small dining area was full with the family. She carried a tray with 2 bowls of hearty beef stew, fresh bread, and apple cider. The food was amazing. The kind of homemade meal Lisa hadn't had in years. They ate by candlelight since the power was still out. At first, they ate in silence. But eventually, Michael asked about her trip, and Lisa found herself explaining about her grandmother's party. She talked about how guilty she felt for not visiting more often, how work had consumed her life. Michael listened carefully, then shared his own story. He'd been working corporate photography for years, taking pictures of products and buildings for advertisements. But he'd always dreamed of doing meaningful work, capturing history before it disappeared. This trip was his first real step toward that dream, and he couldn't afford to miss it. "What made you finally do it?" Lisa asked. "My dad passed away last year. He always told me to follow my passion, but I never listened. I kept waiting for the right time, the right moment. Then he was gone, and I realized there is no perfect time. You just have to start." His words hit Lisa harder than she expected. She'd been doing the same thing, putting off life until everything was perfect at work. But work was never perfect. There was always another project, another deadline, another excuse. They talked until late, the candlelight flickering between them. Outside, the storm raged on. But inside that small room, something unexpected was happening. Two strangers were becoming something more than that. Lisa woke up to the sound of wind howling against the window. For a moment, she forgot where she was. Then she remembered the storm, the inn, and Michael sleeping on the floor beside the bed. She sat up and looked down. He was still asleep, wrapped in blankets near the fireplace. The room was cold. The fire had died down during the night. Lisa quietly got up and added more wood, trying not to wake Michael. But the sound of the logs shifting made him stir. He opened his eyes and looked around, seeming just as disoriented as she'd been. "Morning," he said, his voice rough from sleep. "Morning." The storm's still going. They both looked out the window. The snow was even heavier than yesterday, piling up against the glass. Lisa checked her phone, hoping for a signal, but there was nothing. No service, no internet, no connection to the outside world. Margaret knocked softly and brought them breakfast. Oatmeal with honey, fresh fruit, and coffee. She told them the roads were still closed, and might be for at least another day. The highway patrol had announced that conditions were too dangerous for any travel. Lisa felt her heart sink. She was going to miss the party. Her grandmother would be so disappointed. She excused herself to the small bathroom and let herself feel the frustration. When she came out, Michael was standing by the window. "I'm sorry about your grandmother's party," he said gently. "It's not your fault. It's just bad timing. Maybe when this clears you can still make it. Even if you're late, I'm sure she'd rather see you than not see you at all." His kindness made her feel a little better. They finished breakfast and faced the reality of another long day stuck in this small room. Michael suggested they explore the inn, and Lisa agreed. Anything was better than staring at four walls. Downstairs, they found Margaret in the kitchen and asked if they could look around. She smiled and told them to make themselves at home. The inn had a small library filled with old books and photo albums. They spent the morning looking through pictures of the inn's history. That's when they found the story. In a leather-bound album, there were pictures of a young couple standing in front of the inn in 1952. According to the handwritten notes, they'd met during a terrible snowstorm, stranded together just like Lisa and Michael. They'd fallen in love during those few days, and eventually married. They'd gone on to run the inn together for 40 years. "That's pretty incredible," Michael said, studying the photos. "Do you believe in that kind of thing? Meeting someone by chance and just knowing? I used to think it was just stories people told. But lately, I don't know. My parents met by accident too. My mom's car broke down, and my dad stopped to help. They always said the best things in life are unplanned." They spent the afternoon playing old board games they found in a closet. Checkers, cards, and a puzzle with half the pieces missing. They laughed more than Lisa had laughed in months. Michael had a dry sense of humor that caught her off guard, and she found herself relaxing around him. As evening approached, they sat by the fireplace and talked about deeper things. Lisa admitted she'd been running from commitment her whole adult life. After her mother died when she was 16, she'd learned that loving people meant risking loss, so she'd buried herself in work, keeping everyone at arm's length. Michael shared that his recent breakup had happened because he'd been too focused on what he thought he should want, rather than what actually made him happy. His ex-girlfriend had told him he was building a life that looked good on paper but had no soul. "She was right," he said quietly. "I was so busy trying to be successful that I forgot to be alive." "I think I've been doing the same thing," Lisa admitted. That night, when it was time for bed, Lisa insisted Michael take half the bed. The floor was too cold, and she felt terrible watching him try to get comfortable on the hard wood. He hesitated but finally agreed. They lay on opposite sides, a careful distance between them. But as they talked in the darkness, sharing fears and dreams they'd never told anyone, the distance seemed less important. Lisa felt something shifting inside her. Walls she'd built for years starting to crack, and maybe, just maybe, that wasn't such a bad thing. The third morning brought more snow but also something else. a shift in the air between them. Lisa woke up and realized she was closer to the middle of the bed than she'd been when she fell asleep. Michael was closer too. Their hands were almost touching. Neither of them mentioned it. Margaret knocked early with news. The family had left an hour ago with a snowplow escort during a brief break in the weather. Lisa and Michael could have gone too, but neither had woken up. Margaret said it apologetically, but Lisa noticed Michael didn't seem upset about it, and truthfully, neither was she. After breakfast, Margaret asked if they could help with a few repairs around the inn. The storm had loosened a shutter, and she needed someone tall enough to reach it. Michael volunteered immediately, and Lisa offered to help. They worked together outside, the cold air biting at their faces. Michael held the ladder while Lisa tightened the screws. Then they switched, and he fixed the higher parts. They moved around each other naturally, like they'd done this 100 times before. When their hands accidentally touched passing tools, neither pulled away quickly. Inside, they helped Margaret rearrange furniture in the dining room and carry firewood from the shed. It felt good to be useful, to work side by side on simple tasks. They laughed when Michael almost dropped a log on his foot, and Lisa couldn't stop the snort that escaped, which made them both laugh even harder. In the afternoon, they found themselves alone in the library again. The family room was quiet, and Margaret was resting upstairs. Michael stood close to Lisa as they looked at another photo album. She could feel the warmth from his body, smell the faint scent of wood smoke on his sweater. "Can I tell you something?" he said softly. "Of course. I'm glad we got stuck here. I know that's probably a strange thing to say, but these past few days, talking to you, it's made me remember what actually matters." Lisa's heart was beating faster. "I know what you mean. I've been so focused on getting somewhere that I forgot to notice where I actually am." Michael reached for her hand, and this time it wasn't an accident. His fingers intertwined with hers, warm and solid. Lisa didn't pull away. Instead, she moved closer. The moment hung between them, full of possibility, but then her phone buzzed. Signal had returned. Just for a moment. Lisa pulled her hand back and grabbed the phone. Message after message flooded in. Her grandmother, worried. Her father, angry. Her boss, furious about a presentation she'd missed. Reality came crashing back like cold water. She read through the messages, feeling the weight of all her responsibilities pressing down on her. She'd let everyone down. She'd been so caught up in this bubble with Michael that she'd forgotten about real life. "I need to get out of here," she said suddenly. "I need to get back to my life." "Lisa, wait. No. This was a mistake. I shouldn't have let myself get distracted. My grandmother needed me, and I wasn't there. My work needed me, and I failed them. I can't just hide away and pretend none of that matters." Michael's face fell. "That's not what we've been doing. We've been stuck here. It's not our fault. Maybe if you'd woken me up this morning, we could have left with that family. Maybe you wanted to stay here." The words came out harsh, fueled by guilt and fear. Michael stepped back like she'd slapped him. "You think I kept you here on purpose?" "I was asleep, Lisa. Just like you. I don't know what to think anymore. All I know is that I've spent 3 days avoiding my responsibilities, and now everyone's angry with me. This whole thing was a bad idea. So what? The past 3 days meant nothing to you? They weren't real life, Michael. This isn't real. We're two strangers stuck in a storm. That's all." Michael's expression hardened. "If that's what you really think, then fine. Maybe you're right. Maybe you should stick to your perfect planned life where nothing unexpected ever happens and you never have to feel anything." His words cut deep because they were true. Lisa wanted to take it back, to explain that she was scared, that she was pushing him away because getting close meant risking pain. But the words wouldn't come. Instead, she turned away. Michael grabbed his coat and went downstairs. Lisa stayed in the room, tears finally coming. She'd ruined it. She'd let fear win again, just like always. And now she'd hurt someone who actually understood her. Someone who'd seen past all her walls and liked what he found anyway. Outside the window, the storm continued to rage. The fourth morning was different. Lisa woke to silence. No wind, no snow hitting the window, just quiet. She sat up and saw bright sunlight streaming through the glass. The storm had finally passed. Michael's side of the bed was already empty. His bag was packed and sitting by the door. He was downstairs. She could hear his voice talking to Margaret. Lisa's chest felt tight. This was it. The end of whatever this had been. She packed quickly, trying not to think about last night's argument. When she came downstairs, Michael was settling the bill with Margaret. He barely looked at Lisa. Just gave her a polite nod. "Roads are clear," he said flatly. "We should go." The drive was quiet. Painful, uncomfortable silence filled the car. Lisa stared out the window at the white landscape, everything covered in fresh snow. It was beautiful, but she couldn't appreciate it. All she could think about was the things she'd said, the way she'd pushed Michael away. When they reached her grandmother's town, Michael pulled up to the address Lisa had given him. Her family's cars were already there. The party was over, but at least she could see her grandmother now. "Thank you for the ride," Lisa said, her voice small. "No problem," Michael replied, still not really looking at her. "Take care of yourself." She wanted to say more. She wanted to apologize, to explain, to ask him to wait. But her family came rushing out of the house, and the moment was lost. Her grandmother hugged her tight, her father looked relieved, and everyone talked at once. When Lisa turned back to the car, Michael was already driving away. The next 3 weeks were torture. Lisa went back to work, back to her apartment, back to her regular life. But nothing felt right anymore. The meetings felt pointless. The deadlines felt arbitrary. Her perfectly organized life felt empty. She kept thinking about those days at the inn, the conversations by firelight, the way Michael listened when she talked, the feeling of his hand in hers. She'd been so scared of getting hurt that she'd hurt them both instead. Lisa started making changes, small ones at first. She set boundaries at work, actually leaving at reasonable hours. She called her father and had a real conversation about her mother, about grief, about the walls she'd built. She even talked to her grandmother about fear and love and taking chances. Her grandmother had smiled and said something Lisa couldn't forget. "Sweetheart, the only thing scarier than loving someone is reaching the end of your life and realizing you never let yourself try." One evening, Lisa sat in her apartment with her phone in her hand. She'd kept Michael's number, saved from when they'd exchanged information on that awkward last day. She'd typed and deleted 100 messages over the past weeks. Finally, she just wrote the truth. "I'm sorry for what I said. You were right about me being scared. I've been thinking about those days at the inn, and I realized they were the most real thing I've felt in years. I'm trying to be braver now. Would you maybe want to get coffee sometime?" She hit send before she could overthink it. Then she waited. 5 minutes, 10 minutes, an hour. Nothing. Maybe it was too late. Maybe she'd burned that bridge too badly. Then her phone buzzed. "I've been thinking about those days too. And actually, I could use your help with something. I'm pitching a project next week. Designing a community center for underserved neighborhoods. It's the kind of work I should have been doing all along. I need someone who understands what really matters, someone who gets it." "Interested?" Lisa read the message 3 times, a smile spreading across her face. It wasn't just coffee. It was better than that. It was real. "When and where?" she typed back. "Next Tuesday. I'll send you the details. And Lisa, I'm glad you're being braver." "Me too." Lisa booked a train ticket that night. She didn't know exactly where this was going. Maybe it would work out, maybe it wouldn't. But that wasn't the point anymore. The point was trying. The point was showing up. The point was letting someone in, even when it scared her. Sometimes it takes being trapped in one room with nowhere to run to realize you've been the one locking yourself away all along. And sometimes the scariest thing you can do is also the most worthwhile. Lisa was finally ready to find out what happened when you stopped running and started living instead. The train would leave Tuesday morning. She had 5 days to prepare. But for the first time in years, Lisa wasn't preparing a presentation or a plan. She was just preparing to be honest, to be open, to see where life could go when you stopped trying to control every single moment. Outside her window, the city lights sparkled. Somewhere out there, Michael was probably working on his pitch, following his own dreams. And soon, maybe, they'd figure out how to build something together. Not perfect, but real. And that was enough.